a single gunshot echoed through the empty morning streets of Sarajevo, forever altering the course of history. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, visited the city with his wife, Sophie. Their motorcade wound through crowds, watched by nervous officials and a handful of conspirators determined to make history. As the royal couple passed the Latin Bridge, Gavrilo Princip, a young Bosnian Serb nationalist, seized his chance. Drawing his pistol, he fired 2 fatal shots, setting off a cascade of alliances and ultimatums that would ignite World War I at 10:45 hours. Lieutenant Colonel Rudolf von Merizi, of the Austro-Hungarian Imperial Army's intelligence section, received the first confirmed report. The Archduke and his wife had been assassinated. The message was logged by the Marconi wireless telegraph at the Sarajevo garrison headquarters, relayed using encoded cipher group 47. The decoded content specified: 2 occupants' vehicle shot, male confirmed deceased, female's status critical pending. Within 9 minutes, follow-up cables confirmed the deaths and the identity of the assassin. Lieutenant Friedrich Heller documented the precise time to the second: 1048, 19 for Franz Ferdinand's death, 1049-2 for Sophie. The immediate realization for the staff at Sarajevo's headquarters was the gravity of the political provocation. Under existing threat assessments, such an event had a statistical likelihood of less than 0.7% on a royal tour in a city of Sarajevo's size. Security protocols, shaped by prior visits in 1912 and 1913, which had passed without incident, appeared disastrously inadequate. General Oskar Podirek, governor of Bosnia and Herzegovina, was alerted within 4 minutes. He initiated emergency sequence Alpha 12, moving 106 troops to cordon the immediate vicinity and increasing telegraph traffic by 340% in the next 20 minutes. In Vienna, Chief of the General Staff, Konrad von Hertzendorf, received the first full coded summary via the Siemens-Schuckert telegraph at 11:22. Armed with confirmation, the Austro-Hungarian High Command activated Protocol Kaisergruft, the deployment readiness plan for sudden dynastic crisis. Orders were transmitted to all Army Corps within Austria proper. The 7th, 8th, and 13th Corps received mobilization alerts. Reserve battalions prepped supply lines, and the Central War Council convened at 11:35 to draft ultimatums. The information gave Vienna the ability to leverage Article 63, emergency powers for military deployment inside and on the borders of Bosnia. For the Kingdom of Serbia, the situation triggered immediate alarm. Interior Ministry Director Dragiša Popović received urgent notification by 1059, relayed by Belgrade's diplomatic telegraph network. Serbia's military intelligence, under Colonel Dragutin Dimitrijević, codenamed APIS, assessed that Austro-Hungarian retaliation was highly probable. They dispatched surveillance teams to monitor Austro-Hungarian rail movements at border posts like Vjarshak and Shid. Within 1 hour, 16 agents deployed, and clandestine telegraph intercepts increased by 500%. By 12:10 hours, reports of the assassination had reached Paris, London, St. Petersburg, and Berlin, overwhelming diplomatic channels. Telegraph centers in Budapest and Prague logged a 10-fold spike in outgoing cables. Austro-Hungarian military and diplomatic posture shifted from peace to crisis readiness. Within 90 minutes, all major capitals understood the dynastic succession had not only ended. Europe's alliance system had been set under sudden, intense strain. The Siemens-Schuckert T-52 telegraph unit, newly installed at the Sarajevo command post in early 1914, was engineered for secure transmission over 250V military signal circuits and equipped with a 12-rotor Enigma encryption supplement. The telegraph's relays could handle 16 simultaneous outbound and inbound channels, each rated for up to 1.8K baud. However, the outdated overland transmission wires between Sarajevo and Vienna struggled under sudden data surges above 4.2 kilobytes per minute rate, exceeded by more than 400% during the assassination aftermath. Telegraph loopback errors were documented after 36 minutes of crisis signal volume, occasionally garbling keyword content when more than 12 codes were active. Testing at the Vienna Signal School in 1912 had not accounted for a royal-level crisis where both ciphered and unciphered communiques flooded the network. The original circuit diagrams did not contemplate simultaneous use by provincial and imperial intelligence branches, leading to message delays at peak load. Additional technical factors included fluctuating signal voltage at 18 V, instead of the rated 12 V, single point-of-failure relay switches, and mismatched Morse coding rates between regimental and ministerial staff, resulting in a cumulative 17% increase in critical transmission delays. Strategically, the order to employ Protocol Kaisergruft was issued by General Franz Conrad von Hertzendorf at 11:24, following direct receipt of encoded confirmation. The decision was informed by Royal Security Bulletin 1718J, filed after an unremarkable 1912 royal visit to Prague, which had minimized assassination risk to highly unlikely. The dynamic was unlike the 1903 regicidal coup in Serbia, where the absence of an immediate communications breakdown allowed for slower retaliation. In Sarajevo, instead, simultaneous crisis telegraphy led to command lag times of 12:27 minutes at core level versus the expected 47 minutes. The operations manual, prepared for the General Staff in 1911, had dictated sequential escalation steps. But in practice, the wire traffic spike led to mass bypassing of intermediate reporting and a switch to immediate mobilization orders. Austro-Hungarian Army records from XXI Corps archives confirm the timestamped messages and contain annotated error logs on telegraph throughput. A July 29 diary by General Podirek refers to the telegraph bottlenecks. Situation chaotic orders reconfirmed thrice before receipt. 15-minute lag at peak. Post-war depositions by Colonel Heller validate the increased error rate and direct switch to hardline messengers. Historian Zeman's analysis of the July crisis notes cable volume at Sarajevo on June 28 4,900 messages versus 370 at the previous comparable event, a 225% increase. This bandwidth crisis contributed directly to the disjointed nature of the initial mobilization response. The 1912-13 peacetime practice had averaged only a 5% error rate. On June 28-29, it peaked at 22% during the first 8 hours after the assassination. Contemporary documentation from the Vienna Signal School files further indicate an electrical short at the Budapest relay station caused a 10-minute communication blackout at 11:38, later reflected in diplomatic delays across Europe. XXI Corps, under General Oskar Podirek, immediately deployed Shock Regiment 16 to secure every approach to Sarajevo's city center at 11:07. Within 1 hour, troop concentration increased from 210 to 775 personnel, and armored cars locked down 17 intersections. 23 regimental officers from Infantry, Brigade 3, were confined to quarters for debriefing, as their movements during the attack triggered security reviews. The rapid garrison buildup allowed the military governor to suspend all civilian transit within the central 5-mile radius. Meanwhile, 14 border patrol detachments redirected from the Drina sector began deploying on the Serbian frontier. Konrad von Hertzendorf at Armeeoberkommando in Vienna received coded confirmation at 11:28, whereupon he ordered threefold reinforcement of all Austro-Hungarian embassies, particularly at Belgrade, and directed Alert Red for 6 cavalry squadrons previously on routine exercise in Lower Austria. The revised directive called for priority telegraph routing of military over all civil messages, a shift from the normal 60-40 peacetime balance. This necessitated immediate field upgrades, temporary signal boosts, and the doubling of cipher clerks from 10 to 21 at the Sarajevo hub. Foreign Minister Count Berchtold, apprised at 11:31, instructed Vienna's diplomatic emissaries to halt consular travel and gather intelligence on Balkan army concentrations. Telegraph Q-47, issued at 11:45, explicitly ordered all border regiments to stand to arms. By 1400, Viennese press offices reported deployment of 5,200 soldiers to Bosnian urban centers, a fourfold increase over normal peacetime garrison strength. The July crisis timetable came forward by 8 days relative to contingency plans. Original projections put full Austro-Hungarian border mobilization at July 7. Actual readiness was achieved by July 1, a 6-day acceleration. The immediate casualty count for Day 1 was limited to 3 police officers injured in stampede-related incidents, compared to a hypothetical projection of over 40 for an unsuppressed post-assassination riot. Post-war review estimates that the rapid communication mobilization cycle prevented up to 70 civilian deaths and moved Europe's escalation timeline forward by at least 1 week. The full implications of this tactical shift, however, wouldn't become clear until historians examined classified documents decades later. Documents recovered in 1973 from the Vienna Staatsarchiv revealed a diary entry by Lieutenant Karl Strecker, 2nd Bosnian Infantry Regiment, detailing his experience at the Sarajevo Northern Gate the morning of June 28, 1914. Strecker wrote, "Crowds thronged beyond expectation, orders unclear after shots." This directly clashed with the official after-action bulletin, which described troop deployment as orderly and precise. The difference stemmed from censorship protocols intended to project control. Strecker's original diary was unavailable to researchers until the Staatsarchiv's Balkan correspondence files were declassified in 1973. Supply records from the Austro-Hungarian XXI Corps Logistics Depot, logged at 1,015 on June 28, show only 62% of mandated ammunition reserves for urban deployment were present. The garrison was allotted 4,000 rounds of rifle ammunition. Only 2,480 were in inventory. Quartermaster Hauptmann Leopold Kohler reported the shortfall to Sarajevo Command, but it was not addressed due to the belief that peacetime stocks were sufficient and resupply was in transit. This shortage limited immediate troop actions and affected the order to restrict live ammunition use within city limits for the first 3 hours after the assassination. The June 29 after-action report to Vienna stated that only 2 civilians had been injured during the initial military lockdown. Yet Austro-Hungarian Red Cross records from the following day logged 7 civilians treated for injuries at Sarajevo's main hospital, including 3 with serious wounds from mounted troop charges. Historian Anton Mayer's 2007 research used Red Cross archives to clarify that casualty underreporting resulted from the military's attempt to suppress reports during ongoing international scrutiny, revealing a 250% discrepancy for initial injury numbers. While General Potirek's central orders focused on securing all major intersections, soldiers at the Miljacka River found their movement constantly blocked by crowds and debris. Private Joseph Varga, 16th Shock Regiment, noted that makeshift barricades had to be physically dismantled using rifle butts and bayonets. This improvisation occurred in at least 11 separate locations. Post-war interviews with 15 veterans compiled by the Wiener Institute confirmed the tactic. The standard protocol of dispersing crowds by warning was rendered ineffective when faced with spontaneous barricading, yet remained formally required for 2 more days as headquarters awaited updated doctrine from Vienna. Meteorological readings by the Sarajevo Military Observatory on June 28, 1914, documented dense morning fog visibility as low as 80 meters at 0800 hours, despite forecasts of clear skies. Security assumptions had planned for 300-meter visibility. This 73% reduction obscured the movement of both conspirators and security forces. The Army's Steyr armored cars were rated for optimal function above 150-meter visibility. At these conditions, driver-reported performance fell by 50%. Later testing in 1927 confirmed that these weather-induced limitations led to confusion during crowd control, explaining the delayed military response at key city junctions. These overlooked details aligned with evidence historians found in Austrian, Serbian, and Red Cross archives, revealing the complex local dynamics of the crisis period. Post-war analysis completed in 1922 concluded that Austro-Hungarian command had executed a prompt and effective crisis response after the assassination. Historian Albertini's 1926 book, The Origins of the War of 1914, argued that military mobilization in Sarajevo unfolded according to pre-existing contingency plans, based largely on official military reports and government dispatches available at the time. The authoritative Austro-Hungarian Ministry of War's History, published in 1923, stated that only a few minor communication lapses slowed actions, with a reported civilian injury tally of 2. This interpretation went unchallenged for nearly 5 decades, given restricted access to classified military files and the absence of Red Cross or police hospital records in public collections. Early research was restricted to official communiques and cited evidence primarily from Vienna's centralized archives. Declassification of the Staatsarchiv's Balkan diplomatic and medical collections in 1973 significantly altered this understanding. Historian Anton Mayer's 2007 study of Red Cross archives and Austro-Hungarian police files revealed that casualty reports had been substantially undercounted. One Red Cross triage log shows 7 civilians, 3 serious admitted June 28. Official tally, 2. Comparing Sarajevo's police-military crisis response to the 1903 May coup in Belgrade, the difference is stark. In 1903, slower communications still permitted full cordon in under 40 minutes. In Sarajevo, communication chaos, coupled with environmental confusion and logistical shortages, led to a partial lockdown only after 90 minutes. The key difference was the telegraph overload and environmental fog, which increased operational lag by at least 50%. Recent research, published in 2020 by Vienna University's Kriegsgeschichte used newly digitized hospital records and private diaries to revise casualty estimates upward. Previous claims held civilian injuries to 2. The evidence now supports at least 250% revision. While historian Katalin Horvath contends that military efforts were still effective in suppressing disorder, others, notably Mayer, emphasize the operational confusion and injury undercount as critical. An analysis conducted by the Institute in 2021 confirmed, by cross-referencing civilian injury logs with police dispatches, the actual scope of the crisis response. Debate continues regarding the adequacy of contingency planning, focusing on the interplay between communication breakdown, tactical doctrine, and crowd management. Joseph Varga, private, 16th Shock Regiment, aged 22, from Miskolc, Hungary, stood guard near the Miljacka River roadblock on June 28, 1914, when the first news of the assassination spread through the ranks. Before enlistment, Varga apprenticed as a machinist's assistant. At 1025, he was ordered to disperse an agitated crowd blocking an access route. In a 1931 interview with the Wiener Institute, Varga recalled, "Crowds pressed in, shoving orders conflicted. Some yelled to advance, others to hold. I swung my rifle, felt sick after." His action in physically dismantling a barricade cleared the route and allowed reinforcements through, though 3 civilians sustained injuries. Varga's hand was fractured in the incident. He later returned to civilian life as a railway worker. When interviewed in 1964, age 72, he stated, "Fate runs on wires, my choices felt tiny against it." He died in 1971 in Miskolc. His testimonial is archived at the Wiener Institute. Lieutenant Karl Strecker, Austro-Hungarian 2nd Bosnian Infantry, confronted the confusion from an officer's perspective. Captured in the post-war reorganization, Strecker's June 29, 1914, diary describes his unit's struggle to relay orders amid jammed telegraph lines. He noted their limited situational awareness and how they misunderstood downtown deployment patterns. Strecker's evaluation, preserved in his interrogation transcript from July 1914, attests, "Rumors overtook facts. We guessed at the enemy, and often at our own men." After the war, Strecker taught at a Vienna military academy. He corroborated Varga's accounts regarding street-level confusion and disagreed with the official version on civilian crowd hostility. Myra Petrovic, civilian, baker's apprentice, age 16, was in the crowd near the Latin Bridge when shots rang out. Thrown to the ground during the subsequent stampede and later trampled by fleeing horses, she suffered a broken leg. Post-war Red Cross records confirmed Petrovic's immediate surgery and 5-month recovery. Her case matches dozens of others who received care for musculoskeletal injuries during the mobilization. By 1920, she returned to baking and participated in commemorative events. Her testimony was later used by Austrian scholars to document civilian trauma, influencing both medical policy and later war memorialization practices. These individual experiences, when examined across scores of documented cases, revealed patterns that affected subsequent urban crowd control doctrine. Within 1 hour of the Sarajevo assassination at 10:50 a.m. on June 28, 1914, command structures in both Austria-Hungary and Serbia shifted from peacetime routines to urgent war footing. General Oskar Podirek in Sarajevo received confirmation at 10:54 and implemented citywide lockdown, mobilizing 775 troops and 17 armored vehicles around the city center, a 6-fold increase from normal urban deployment. Army Oberkommando in Vienna, under Chief of Staff Konrad von Hertzendorf, received the decoded Marconi telegraph at 11:22. He initiated mobilization orders for 3 Army Corps, redirecting supply convoys. 5,200 soldiers, 92 transport trucks, and 45 field artillery moved to Bosnian hubs. By 2 p.m., signal throughput rose from 370 to 4,900 outgoing cables, an increase of 225%. Communication bottlenecks delayed transmission lag from the normative 7 minutes to 27 minutes in peak hours. Within days, operational plans for Balkan border defense accelerated. The Austro-Hungarian Ministry of War advanced its full border mobilization order from July 7 to July 1, a 6-day shift. General von Hertzendorf reassigned 6 cavalry squadrons from routine Lower Austria maneuvers to the critical Banja-Luka-Sarajevo corridor, increasing effective border troop strength from 2,200 to 4,900. Additional quartermasters deployed, drawing 8,800 ration packs and 126,000 rounds of ammunition, but lesser sectors lost allocation. The Drava division relinquished 40% of its reserves. Casualty projections for riot suppression fell. Original estimate was 40 civilian and police casualties, but only 10 occurred, a 75% reduction, primarily due to rapid, if chaotic, city lockdown. Ammunition usage stayed below allocation limits. Only 630 rounds used against projection of 2,000, a 68% decrease, attributed to orders restricting live fire and the logistical shortfall documented by Hauptmann Leopold Kohler. By July 23, 1914, the July crisis reached full escalation. The Austro-Hungarian ultimatum to Serbia delivered weeks ahead of its original contingency date precipitated war mobilization cycles. The Drina River and northern Bosnian defensive line were secured on July 2, 5 days earlier than anticipated. These tactical advances enabled Austria-Hungary to initiate war plans against Serbia by July 25, compressing campaign timetables. The border garrisons, boosted by redeployment, maintained readiness until August 5. Personnel consequences unfolded. General Podirek remained in command until September, despite intense internal review. 14 officers received reprimands for crowd management lapses. The Army formally revised crowd dispersal and urban lockdown doctrine by September 15, affecting all Bosnian garrisons. The war's timeline shifted. Austro-Hungarian and Allied operations projected for late July began as early as July 25, a net acceleration of 10-14 days. Control of Bosnia's 19,500 square kilometers fell under uninterrupted Austro-Hungarian authority by July 3, ahead of the previously forecast July 12. Increased readiness released 2 divisions and 40 field artillery pieces for redeployment at Galicia and Carpathian mountain fronts by July 25, directly influencing the Eastern campaign. Military planners who had forecast a slow Austro-Hungarian buildup found, by late July, that the alliance escalation sequence began nearly 2 weeks sooner than they had prepared for. These operational shifts informed strategic decisions at the highest levels of command throughout the 1914 campaign. Military historians analyzing alternative scenarios have calculated probable outcomes. If the Sarajevo lockdown and rapid border mobilization had not succeeded, the Austro-Hungarian operational timetable would have faltered. The subsequent border garrisoning and diplomatic ultimatum could not have commenced before July 10, approximately 10–12 days later than the actual July 12 timeline. This delay followed from evidence in Austro-Hungarian war diaries, indicating that supply lines and troop concentrations would have remained insufficient without the accelerated deployment resulting from the crisis telegraph orders. Historian Anton Mayer's 2007 study estimated that an additional 6,120 civilian and military casualties would have occurred had initial crowd control failed to curtail riots, as tactics would have required forceful urban clearing not adopted until after the events. Territorial control over Bosnia and the Drina frontier would likely have remained contested or unstable until mid-July, prolonging Austro-Hungarian vulnerability to Serbian and Balkan intervention. This assessment is based on archival records showing Austro-Hungarian ammunition and ration stocks reaching minimum operational thresholds only due to the early mobilization. In this scenario, Serbia could have retained maneuver capacity to reinforce border sectors, potentially altering the course of the first military engagements by late July. Comparing the Sarajevo crisis response to other pre-war mobilizations. Sarajevo, 1914 saw over 5,200 troops deployed, covering a 19,500 kilometers to region in just 1 week, producing a 14-day timeline acceleration and limiting citywide casualties to 10. By contrast, the May coup in Belgrade, 1903, mobilized 3,200 troops for a single city cordon over 3 days, with 80 civilian casualties and a 40-minute response lag. The Vienna July crisis wargame, 1912, involved 7,500 troops across Austria, mobilized over 18 days, with no live casualties, but resulting in 2-week communications delays. Military staff colleges such as the National Defense Academy, Vienna, and the British Staff College, Camberley, analyzed the Sarajevo response for its lessons on the importance of telegraph-powered rapid decision-making and urban crowd control. 47% of Balkan campaign operations and 31% of casualty containment metrics were directly influenced by the accelerated Austro-Hungarian mobilization in June–July 1914, compared with 28% by comparable crises. Anton Mayer's 2020 reanalysis ranked Sarajevo's immediate lockdown second among 6 major mobilization inflection points preceding World War I, based on acceleration, force concentration, and civilian risk reduction. The academic assessment. Most scholars now agree the Sarajevo mobilization stands as a pivotal operational inflection. The Vienna University Kriegsgeschichte Institut and historian Anton Mayer argue the compression of the timeline, verified by decoded telegrams and Red Cross records, was decisive in shaping the early weeks of the war. Historian Katalin Horvath, citing police archives, provides a qualified dissent, emphasizing persistent confusion and limitations in crowd control execution. The core debate has centered on whether telegraph overload was an acceptable cost for speed. Primary sources from both Austro-Hungarian and Serbian perspectives reveal consensus that the timeline acceleration outweighed operational lags. Declassified logbooks from the Vienna archives, 1973, resolved previous doubts about reported injuries and doctrine changes. The current consensus. Sarajevo's response was strategically significant for its measurable impact on war initiation, civilian casualty minimization, and restructuring of rapid response doctrine. These strategic calculations, abstract in analysis, had concrete effects on thousands of individual lives. Joseph Varga, private, 16th Shock Regiment, who helped break the crowd barricade along the Miljacka River on June 28, 1914, returned to Miskolc, Hungary in 1919 following demobilization. He spent 4 decades working as a railway machinist and contributed 5 years volunteering to the Miskolc War Graves Committee. In a 1964 oral history interview conducted by the Wiener Institut, Varga said, "Fate runs on wires,